Alright, hello everybody. Today we're gonna talk about Stats of a Storm. That is a program which helps you analyzing the teams you might be casting about. If you are yourself playing in any of these leagues, you can also just use it for scouting. So it's a double purpose here to present the Stats of a Storm a little bit to you. We're gonna look through it mostly through the lens of casting and what kind of talking points you can extract from Stats of a Storm. So in this episode, we're just gonna talk about the installation of Stats of a Storm, what kind of information you can extract from it, without really touching anything of our OBS setup over here. So let's get into it, and then in the next episode, we're gonna talk about how we can actually use Stats of a Storm inside your casting streamer, because that is possible too. So how do you get Stats of a Storm? You follow the link in the video descriptions document. Under this episode there's a link to this homepage. Actually leads you here, and then you go to releases page, and you get the latest executable if you're on Windows. If you're not on Windows, you have to probably get this one and look up how to install that properly in the description over here. Okay, so you would get the executable here and install this on your machine. Windows will complain that it does not know the software, it might be malware. You have to go into more information and accept that you want to install this. Once you have done this, you can actually start Stats of a Storm. And here's a little caveat. If you are running Soothsayer and Soothsayer already has running Stats of a Storm, then your Stats of a Storm program will not load, because it can only have your machine can only run one instance of Stats of a Storm. So if you are looking at a very long loading screen at Stats of a Storm and nothing is happening at all, then consider closing Soothsayer, right? So if you load Stats of a Storm, you will look at something which looks similar to this, but not exactly like this. So there will be like some of these matches being displayed here, and you probably don't have any clue what to do with it right from the bat. So the first thing you need to do is you need to find a database which is relevant to your casting. So let's say you are casting NGS, then you want to have a database which is relevant to NGS. So for example, there is the NGS Season 12 zip file linked in the document in the description. So if we go here and we just go to the zip file, and it will ask you to download that, you do so, and what you do is you put it close to your streaming setup. So I have here my streaming setup, so these are all folders in my streaming folder. I have Stats of a Storm, and there's the NGS Season 12 zip file unpacked here. And if you look into it, there are like these 4 folders, and all of these 4 folders are needed. If you have a zip file unpacked which does not provide these 4 folders, then it will not work with Stats of a Storm. But you just need to unpack it here. There's nothing else you need to do with it. So let's have a look at how to get this data into Stats of a Storm. You go to Settings, and here you go to Database folder, and here you can browse your system, and you just select that folder we just unzipped here. I'm not going to do it right now because I have already done it. However, if you do it, then you will see that Stats of a Storm actually closes and restarts with the new data being loaded. Okay. So now let's go back. So assume you have done this. Stats of a Storm will reload into this screen over here. And we're gonna come back to the screen in a second, because while this is cool information here, it's not as relevant for your casting. I think what's more relevant for your casting is this team details page and maybe the player details page. Okay, so let's go into team details first. And if you go into overall, it will look probably empty if you load this, because you need to select the team you want to get information from. So here are all the teams from NGS Season 12, and if these teams are still playing in Season 13, they might be relevant for your casting right now as the day of this recording. But depending on which league you are playing in, you might have to get the proper zip file. So where are you getting the zip files from, by the way? You usually have to go to the casters channel and see if there is a link pinned somewhere pointing you to the right zip file. Okay, so here are all the teams from the previous season. So let's have a look at my old team, the Baddest Dudes. And if you click that, it will load and the information will appear here. I can demonstrate this quickly. If I go to Wood League Airlines really quick, it will load a little bit and we get the information about Wood League Airlines. So let's go back to the Baddest Dudes. Okay, and you see there's like a lot of stuff happening here, and this is just the first tab. So I want to point you to some stats which might be more interesting for your casting, to extract some talking points for filling breaks or for creating hype about the match you're going to cast. So the first one I want to put your attention to is the map summary over here. So that's obviously a good one to talk about in the beginning of a match, where we are going like through the map bans and through the map picks. Or it's also good if you are like in between games. Your teams usually take their time to make a decision on what they want to do, if they want first pick or map picks, or you can talk about what you think the teams should go for, and then you can make some predictions about what game or what map they probably pick into here. So looking at the history of the Baddest Dudes, obviously we seem to like Dragonshire because we played 5 games on it with a 60% win rate. Tomb of the Spider Queen and Brax's Holdout sticks out to me here, especially Brax's Holdout, because usually that's not a very popular map usually. So you can see that the Baddest Dudes probably pick quite a few games on Brax's Holdout, right? Another thing to talk about, especially during draft, is when the number of times certain heroes have been played by this team. So you can sort here by number of games. We see that the Baddest Dudes played a lot of Anduin, Chromie, Kalphas, right? But also Stitches and Joe. So you can start talking about that. You can talk about their respective win rates. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can also think about, okay, like what are the first round picks actually here? Because I think that is even more telling of what heroes that team prefers. So here we have like 8 first round picks of Anduin out of the 10 picks total. So Baddest Dudes obviously a big fan of Anduin here, a big fan of Stitches and Johanna as well. So this is really good information in the draft. There's also win rate against heroes. So if the opponent is picking something like a Mei, you can look in here and say, okay, yeah, the Baddest Dudes are actually doing fairly well against a Mei. Alright. Or they're doing fairly well against a Falstad or a Nubarak. So if the enemy picks that, you might say, okay, that's gonna be interesting. But Baddest Dudes is very vulnerable against the Stukov, for example, right? So you can say in your stream like, oh, the enemy picked Stukov. This would be the first time the Baddest Dudes would win a game against Stukov, right? So you create some interesting open questions there in your coverage of a game. Okay, let's move to there's more stuff here. You can look at what the dudes are banning. You can look at their hero summary, like how these heroes are actually faring with KDA and so on. Let's move on to roster for now. So that gives you more information about the actual players in that team. So first of all, you see like a big list of players for the Baddest Dudes, but you can also see like who of them are probably main roster here by sorting by games. When you see Xavier, Peach, Beeman, Tudy, Moss, and Demon Grant, as well as Matt Kaiser and Morris, probably the main roster here. The others are subs because they played on only a couple of games. So then you can look in here and see what kind of heroes they played the most often, what is their KDA, and so on and so forth. So that is something nice to look at. It's you can get these numbers by average, minimum, maximum, and whatnot. Also interesting might be, and this is like really going into the weeds now. I'm not sure you want to do this for your cast, but if you're like casting like a big game, like a finals, you might want to dig up something here up front in preparation to your stream. Really get familiar with both these teams so that you have enough things to say. So obviously here this is about how certain combinations of heroes worked out for that team. So here we played Chromie and Andor. We played it 3 times, but only one out of 2. So that is something you can talk about, and you can sort these, right? You can go and say, oh, sorry. You can go and say like, okay, what is the most paired hero if they pick Anduin up, right? And we see like the most paired hero for that is actually Calfloss, and you can make some predictions in the chat as well. Okay, I think this one is more interesting for your casting. The compare. The compare tab over here. So the first team again is the baddest dudes, but now you can pick a second team, and I think I might have to reload this. Okay. So say you are casting the game between the baddest dudes and 30 seconds to Marsh. So then this is a really interesting tab to just keep open during your casting. You can, for example, look here. So the square bracket 1, that means it is the first team, and the square bracket 2 means it is the second team, so 30 seconds to Marsh in this case. So you can have a look at, for example, what kind of maps both teams prefer. The sorting here does not work. Let's go to games. And you can see that both teams actually are pretty happy with playing Dragonshire. On the other side, the baddest dudes, they prefer Praxis Holdout and Tomb of a Squire Queen way more than 30 seconds to Mosh would. So we wouldn't be surprised to see 30 seconds of Mosh like throwing out a Praxis ban, for example, right? On the other side, you wouldn't be surprised to see the baddest dudes throwing out a BOE ban, because 30 seconds to Mosh really likes that map, or even more so, a Volskaya Foundry ban by the baddest dudes, because 30 seconds to Mosh has 80% win percentage on it and played it 5 times. The baddest dudes have played it 0 times, right? So you can make some storyline here, depending on how map picks go. If we scroll down a little bit here, we can have a look at specific contested heroes, and I like to go here and look at the round 1 picks and just sort it by one of the teams, and then look for high percentages on both teams. So for example, the Johanna here is 70.4% picked in round 1 by the baddest dudes, but it's also picked 30% of the time by 30 seconds to Marsh. So that will be a key hero in the draft, like who will get it, right? Or will it get banned out, and then either team has to live with the consequences of that. Brightwing is another contested one over here. So you can have a look at these numbers and see which heroes are very contested between the two teams. And that's I think that's pretty cool information during the draft as well. And so the good thing is you can while you're having you're here in your OBS, you are sitting in the draft, stuff is happening in the game, draft is being done. And you can just have Stats of a Storm open during that time. Maybe not in full window. Maybe you make it a little bit smaller, and you just scroll down here. Scroll down here into this table, and you just have a look at this table while the draft is happening. You can put it like somewhere in the middle of your streaming setup, just where your usual canvas would be, and then you can just scroll in and out here and have a look at these while you still see your chat, while you still have control over your settings and stuff like this. So that is one way to use Stats of the Storm, and I think it's pretty cool. The other way would be to prepare for your game, get this information out of the Stats of the Storm, and write it down on a piece of paper or on a small text document, which you can have open during your stream. And that gives you some talking points as well. I would do that for finals, for example. So the next episode, we're gonna talk about how to get actual information out of Stats of a Storm directly into your streaming setup, and that will be pretty interesting. I can demonstrate. No, I don't. I cannot demonstrate it right now. We will demonstrate it in the next episode. So I hope to see you there.